Listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good morning. Welcome to Points of View on Teachers Talk Radio. This morning we have myself, Rae, Christopher Vowles, and Yasmin Omar. And we are going to start with discussing an article that's come up on TES magazine. So the headline is Parent Allegations Against Teachers Rise by a Third. So parent allegations against teachers have risen by a third in just 1 year, apparently. Some 12.2% of state school teachers were the subject of an allegation from a parent in the previous school year, so 24 to 25. And that's up from 9.1% in the year before that, 23 to 24. So the number of allegations against teachers made by students is lower, but it also has increased from 8.1 to 9.5% over the same time period. So this is being discussed as a sharp rise in allegations that's deeply worrying. And they discuss later on in the article that oftentimes allegation and complaint are phrases that are used interchangeably, but allegation comes with more serious, it concerns more serious things, like in risking the safety of a child, for example, rather than assigning too much homework or, not accepting a late paper. So allegations, the terminology is quite serious. And for 12.2% of state school teachers to be the subject of allegations from parents in the last academic year does seem quite high. It's higher than I expected it to be. And I've seen and heard of a lot of them, a lot of allegations, the overwhelming majority being unfounded and unproven, and some of them just malicious. So that number still surprises me. 12.2 seems pretty high. Do either of you have a viewpoint, a point of view on that number? Is it kind of where you expected it to be? Are you surprised by the increase?
I'd say I'm not surprised by the increase. But I definitely have seen crazy things that teachers have been reported for. I think I've mentioned before, I have a really good friend who got reported to the TRA because she refused to let a kid sit where they'd asked with their friend. And so, this kid obviously went home and told their parents, and the parents escalated it. The school didn't really do anything. And then the next thing my friend knew was she got an email from the TRA directly saying, we've received an allegation, and we just want to let you know that we're not taking any further action. And I still can't, every time I remember that, I still can't believe it was real. So I can't say I'm surprised because I've seen that. I'd say the actual number probably isn't that important to me. I feel like I was focused more on what I think are the reasons behind it, and I can't say any of those reasons are particularly surprising to me. I mean, the one thing I will say in defense of parents and carers is that I do feel like schools now have really different expectations to maybe when they were at school, and I just feel like a lot of people don't realize that and instead think, oh my God, the school is attacking my child. This must be personal. This must be because my child is this or the other. And I do feel like that massive shift in schools, which I think is for the better in many respects, is just something that a lot of people aren't familiar with. And so I think when you combine that with this whole rise in cancel culture and how people have seen, because of the internet, if you shout loud enough or enough people join a bandwagon, you can take down, you can force the hand of any kind of organization or business, or do you know what I mean? I feel like that for me plays a huge hand where before I just feel like complaints have increased a lot, partly because of social media across all like areas, not just education. I think where it used to be, something doesn't seem right to me here, I'm going to actually show up at the reception and, try find out what happened in good faith, has now become, no, I'm just going to go to the internet and hope that the Sun get in touch.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that as well. I do feel like that's the case. And I feel like there are a number, I mean, I've seen a number of parents who kind of skip what you said about your friend getting a letter from the TRA. It's just, I can believe that's real. I fully believe that's real, because I've seen parents skip the process and just jump right over. No, I'm not going to contact that teacher directly. No, I'm not going to contact their the head teacher or ask reception who their line manager is. No, I'm not going to speak to the governors even. I'm not, although I have seen people jump straight to the governors as well. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight to social media and drag people publicly when I have one side of the story. No, I'm going to go straight to Ofsted and make a complaint. No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So it's that attitude of just jumping over and like skipping through due process because I don't know, they feel like they're an exception or something. Like it's the exceptionalism, I think, that bothers me. That, and I talk a lot about, I have spoken a lot about a number of parents thinking that their kids are the exception to every rule, or they don't have to do X, Y, or Z just because they're their own kids. Like parental logic blows my mind. But I've seen it happen here as well. Like they feel that they don't have to, parents feel sometimes that they don't have to go through the same process as everybody else just because it's their kid.
Yeah, I agree. But I feel like part of that exceptionalism comes from, if you just go to the highest level in the first place, that you will be forcing the hand of the organization or the school. I feel like that is part of the motivation. Yes, like it is partly, I feel like my kid is better than every other kid in the world, but I also think part of it is rather than, I think a lot of people feel like if they just go to the school and even speak to maybe a head of year or a form tutor or, a member of senior leadership, that, they're not going to be taken seriously. And so people will go to, the LADO, the local authority, Ofsted, the news, because then I feel like it's more that people feel what has happened is a far bigger deal than it normally is.
That as well, yeah.
And that enough people will be interested. And then I feel like part of the reason why they think people will be interested in this and why they're kind of emboldened is because the media every year will have a kid on the news in September for, their haircut or refusing to wear school shoes, or, because they weren't allowed to go to the toilet, or, something like that. And so people, I feel like the media has massively like kind of exacerbated or kind of lowered the threshold for what people would naturally tolerate in the past, or just maybe let slide or give the benefit of the doubt. But now, if you can be on a national newspaper for refusing to wear school shoes, then why isn't your child getting a detention for not doing homework important enough for Ofsted to hear about on a Tuesday afternoon?
Agreed. Yeah. And sorry, I'm trying to think of an exact quote, because I read one in September on some article, that one of the ones that you just mentioned, I can't think of it. I can't even think of what it was about. It was something like school shoes. And the parents were kicking off, and you have the picture of the angry parent, the very serious parent, and then the sad kid, and then the sad kid looking like they're about to cry because they can't wear their trainers, in the picture, and and the parent says something like, or whatever it was the kid wasn't allowed to do, and the parent was saying something like, it's not that big of a deal, like it doesn't impact their education, this is not a big deal. And I just remember thinking, then why is your angry face on a front page? Like, why is your angry face on my phone if it's not such a big deal? Just wear the freaking shoes or whatever it was. Like they don't seem to get the irony of it not actually being a big deal and yet running to the media. And then and I do hold the media to I do think they are generally more to blame because they keep running the stories. This is what they keep putting out there. And until that stops, I mean, we've said it so many times in recent weeks, and Liz has said it in so many times in recent weeks, until the media stops enabling it and encouraging it and demonizing schools for having rules, then this level of petty foolishness is going to continue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I do find interesting though the allegations. I think what they're including in that 12.2% of teachers being subject to it, I think they're including just complaints to schools as well. I don't think they're including like allegations that have gone to the Lotto or gone to the TRA or gone to Ofsted or anything. I think they just are including
Of course,
complaints to schools, which I guess when I think of it that way, it doesn't actually surprise me that much.
Oh yeah. When I hear complaint, I think of every like body. I feel like it's gone everywhere. It's sad, you know. I feel like another thing that I just kind of was giving thought to was I just generally think in England there just isn't enough respect for education and by extension teachers. You know, I've said loads of times, like I feel like all the highest achieving groups in the UK, you know, consistently time and time again, the groups with the highest, you know, attainment and often have the best, you know, kind of behavior records. I feel like a hallmark or just a feature that they consistently share is that a lot of them are either from households or even on a larger scale from cultures that have huge respect for teachers and education. You know, the kind of house where you can't go home and, you know, malign your teacher and then get away with it, where that the default culture or expectation is your teacher is right, you know, and you're going to, or at the very least, you're going to respect your teacher. They don't necessarily have to always be right, but you are going to respect them. And so anything that we raise or we deal with, you know, not saying that teachers don't get things wrong or schools don't make errors, but, you know, we're going to deal with this in good faith because we respect and trust teachers. And so I feel like until that's kind of replicated everywhere, there will always be, like, if someone's default is I don't like schools and I don't like teachers, then why wouldn't they find fault in, you know, what you do?
Yeah. And if you look at, I mean, I feel like I'm treading a very dangerous ground here, but if you look at the kind of the backgrounds of the parents who are making the complaints, you know, patterns do emerge. Patterns emerge. And, you know, the majority of those complaints from parents, in my experience, they're not coming from cultures that respect education and respect teachers. They're coming from the cultures that don't have that reputation so much. So yeah,
I once had a student, like it was September, you know, that time of year when you're kind of getting to know the kids, you've already seen them for maybe like it's your first 2 hours or your first hour with them. And I had this really, really big class. In fact, all my classes were really big, but anyway, really challenging class. And, you know, I was getting them into good routines. It was the start of the year. It was the first time. Some I'd taught the year before, but the overwhelming majority I hadn't. And there was this one girl that I wasn't even speaking to, who just got really angry. And she was like, "Oh, shut up," you know, and she just started swearing at me and stormed out. And I just, like, I was stood there like, I don't know, like what just happened, but like I've still got a lesson to teach, so I'm gonna teach it. Like the kids know I'm their teacher. Like I feel like I'm a very like self-assured teacher. Like I can get through the lesson no matter what happens, I think. But anyway, she stormed out. So I just thought, you know what, at the end, because she'd left her bag and it was the last lesson of the day, so I thought she's gonna have to come back at some point. So I'll deal with this after. The rest of the lesson, you know, was great. And then she did come back for her bag, and I just thought, you know what, I will, like, I'm very big on things like relational practice. Obviously, I was still going to escalate it. It was going to be a sanction, etc. But I did also kind of want to get to the bottom of, has something happened? Because me saying, can everyone like do a worksheet or get started shouldn't kind of evoke that kind of response. Yeah. So like, I get it. I'm a science teacher. There's loads of people who hate science. That's normally my first kind of assumption, or that they've had a bad day, whatever. So I just thought, let me see if I can maybe help, so that when I am reporting this, I can maybe add context for her like pastoral team. But then she wasn't having any of it, whatever. I thought, okay, fine, no problem. She took her stuff and left, and I just thought, I'm gonna have to call home. So I called home, maybe 2-3 minutes, like just the time it takes. Like my laptop was already open, just the time it takes to go open our school system to get the parental contact information. So at most, like, it wasn't even 5 minutes. And as soon as this parent picked up, the parent started swearing at me as well. Like maybe 10 seconds into the call, swearing at me, clearly already knew what happened. So, this child had to have been on their phone during school time, because how on earth do you know what's happened if I can still see your child on their way to the exit and they haven't actually left school yet? And I just remember thinking, okay, I guess in that moment you can just like make assumptions about families or whatever, but I just thought I need to backtrack here. I need to find out what's really upset this child and what's also upset this parent, because it really can't be about me, because you don't even know me. Like, I've taught your child for 2 hours, and it's the first time I've interacted with either of you. So I just started backtracking and asked them, like, not backtracking to like back down on what had happened to me, like, but I just thought, I'm going to just rearrange the order in which I'm going to deal with things. And I asked this parent, is there, you don't know me, like, is there something that's really like, and I can see that you're really upset, and I don't really feel like it's about me. So, is there anything you want to talk to me about that, that might be the source of your frustration? And this parent broke down and said that their child had been on a CAMS register for years, that their child had been severely bullied in primary school, and just lots of other things. Obviously, I don't want like anything to be identifiable, so I'm like watching what I say, but it was really sad. And like, it was clear to me that this child had kind of unresolved feelings and problems from their own experiences in education in the past. And this parent, obviously on behalf of their child, was also feeling this frustration and worry secondhand, and also had kind of been abandoned or not really supported by the systems that exist to support children that are vulnerable or need additional help. And so the reason I say all of this, obviously it was outrageous, and it was eventually dealt with, and the child did apologize and go to detention, etc. But I do also feel a bit like the same way that schools kind of have become quite like isolated from a lot of like public services, and have now been put in a position where they have to deal with like absolutely every aspect of a child's life. In the same way that kind of happens now, like we do sometimes say teachers have to be counselors, teachers have to be this, teachers have to be that. Is it the case that, like, by extension, it's kind of like inadvertently raised the expectation or what people are actually expecting from their schools? And like, could that be part of the reason why complaints have increased? Because if you kind of got used to your school being able to do something for your child, or if you believe they should be doing something for your child that isn't actually their responsibility, can that add to, can that fuel complaints?
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of complaints are made in the state of mind that you just described that parent was in. And it's really sad, and it's not fair on the families, and it's not fair on the students, and it's not fair on the parents, and it's a horrible situation to be in. And I do empathize with getting yourself in that state and lashing out at the wrong people. Like, we've all been there. Some of us do it more than others, but that doesn't make it okay. You need to have a clear grasp on what the school's responsibilities are and what the teacher's role is, and like, not scream and swear at a teacher 10 seconds into a phone conversation. You're an adult. So I guess part of my problem is that I insist on also holding parents to high standards of being a functioning adult in society. And when that doesn't happen, I sympathize with the situation, but like, lady, do not take that out on me.
Yeah.
or we're gonna
Do schools
this is gonna go on for a while.
do schools do a good enough job though of like explaining all their policies? Because I feel like some schools do it better than others. If you're sending people like paper documents or like online links to read about your behavior policies, and I mean I don't read any terms and conditions or anything like long. No, so like I feel like what happens is your new cohort of year 7 comes in, and then it's just kind of sink or swim. You just wait to see who gets it and who doesn't.
Hmm.
Not everywhere. Like there are some schools that do it better than others, and I feel like, funnily enough, those are some of the schools that I feel like sometimes do it really well. Are some of those bigger academy chains who maybe have the money or resources to do that. I don't know what maybe distinguishes the schools, but I do feel like some of the schools with the highest outcomes do regularly make the effort to get every single parent in preemptively, not just like parents' evening, to then go through their policies and explain things. Because I do think sometimes it's just a communication gap. But what will happen is, some kids will come in, just very sink or swim. Okay, now, you've got a parent that's complaining, and now the school don't like the parent, or that child's been labeled as being from, quite a troubled or difficult family. And like, I just think some things are actually preventable on the school's end,
Yeah,
to be honest.
and I do agree with you. I think a lot of schools don't do that properly. But like for example, at my school, and we're changing things and updating things because parental engagement at parents' evening is not where it needs to be. You get students who have additional needs or might need a bit of additional support, kind of getting used to systems. We have them in for multiple days at the end of year 6. Then you have, and there are things that go on that I'm not even aware of. Then there's like meet the tutor, there's meet the teachers, there's parents' evening, there's like welcome days. There are so many different opportunities for parents to come in, meet these people, have conversations, get information. And they're at different times because sometimes like people have jobs. We get that. They're at different times. Emails are always available. Stuff is sent. Phone numbers are there. Like there's so much communication on our end. And so many times when the door is open and they've been invited in, there's the pastoral team do so much work for the incoming year 7s, and the SEN team do so much work for the incoming year 7s that are already identified as needing the additional support. And so many parents still don't turn up. And then you have a number of those parents are then the ones that turn around making X, Y, and Z demands, or having unrealistic expectations of certain things, or, and it's like, we can't, like at some point you actually have to show up for your child. Like you actually have to walk through the door. You actually have to do some of the work here. Like we can't, like where's your effort? And it's not everybody. It's not even the majority. I know that, but it is a number. It's a big enough number that's a problem. And I just sometimes I wonder what else schools are supposed to do, short of stopping by at potential students' homes at a time that is convenient for the family, sitting down and having dinner with them. I genuinely don't understand what else could be done in some cases, because some people just will not show up. And then there's a huge overlap between those people and the ones that are having ridiculous expectations or making ridiculous complaints. So anyway, we need to hear from our sponsors for a moment. And then I want to hear from Chris, because he hasn't contributed to this particular topic, and I gather he has some opinions. So this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today, and you can do that by visiting the website Hachette, that's HACHETTE learning.com, and you can explore their full range of titles. Lots is available on that website. We also have the Bet Show to tell you about. Now, if you haven't been listening recently, there's been a lot of talk about the Bet Show, but it's the biggest week in education. So it's not actually a week, it's the 21st to 23rd of January, but we'll call it a week. And it's in the Excel Center in London. There are immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content, cutting-edge technology, and unrivaled networking. There's no opportunity quite like it. I've never been. Everyone I know who's been says it was a great experience. Get your free ticket today by visiting uk.betshow.com. And finally, our Teachers Talk Connect event is back. So our CPD and networking extravaganza is returning in Manchester on Saturday, the 14th of March. So tickets are free. You should come along. It's a good time. And you get lots of useful information, really informative speakers. You get to talk to a lot of the TTR team and just generally have a nice day out. So you can get your more information about that at ttradio.org/connect2026. So any thoughts on our first topic?
Well, it's certainly interesting listening to your different views and your frustrations with the experience, I think, of working with difficult parents. I mean, difficult parents, I suppose, are the kind of flip side of getting parents more involved in their children's education. So I think what we need to be doing here is working with those parents, as you rightly said, to educate them in terms of how engagement with schools should happen so that they get the results they want, the pupil gets the results they want, and the school gets the result they want, really. And I've seen a lot of that engagement in my time in my own particular context. We have a number of, well, we actually have residentials for parents, either side of their parents' day. I work in a boarding school. So our parents travel from different continents to come to our parents' days. So our parents' days are essentially weekends. So they arrive on a Friday night. They have a retreat together if they've signed up for that. And then we have a series of interviews with those parents most of Saturday morning. And then Saturday afternoon, they go out and watch their children play sport on the sports pitches. Sunday, they go to their church service in the Abbey, and then they go home on the Sunday afternoon. And in terms of bringing all of those parents all of that way to come and see us, we really do deal with any big issues as we think they might arise before they turn up, ideally. So that often involves lots of kind of lengthy, slightly odd-timed telephone conversations to make sure you're in the right time zone. But it's crucial. You have to have those people working with you to get the children to the place that you want them to be. And in fact, I'm actually surprised that the proportion of complaints isn't higher when you consider how many interpersonal contacts there are between human beings all day, every day in school. Even if your school is a 8:30 until 4:00 school, there's all of those opportunities for potential mistakes to be made. So it's about making sure you've got good ways of managing those as and when they arise, I suppose. And then I think the second thing really is we could do with a bit more support from on high. It would be quite nice if we could see some breakthrough in education that's happened nationally that hasn't been transformed into one individual person's triumph over adversity story and salvation narrative. That would be really, really good to see.
Yeah. My brain's still trying to process parents like coming for that long.
Residential, yeah.
Wow. Boarding
That's
school
really
life is so different.
It is, because we generally don't send many of them home. We send a small fraction of them home at the end of each day who live basically on the doorstep of the school, pretty much. But we've got them with us most of the time. So we only really see those parents when they arrive at the school for some significant event. So it's therefore much more important that that conversation on that day has the kind of right positive outcome that you want, really. So all of these initiatives that your school's involved in, getting parents in as often as they can, are really, really crucial from my perspective. And it's about perhaps bringing them in for things that aren't just in primary school settings, the nativity play, in secondary school settings, maybe some kind of Advent service or some other religious celebration that the school might have or be involved in, or some significant sport event. It's looking to get them in for as many small things as you can so that when they turn up for the big things are really memorable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it, to be honest.
It is. It is. And then, and going back to what you said, sorry, Yasmin, going back to what you said about you're surprised the number's not higher. I think if I was in a boarding school and the kids are around 24/7, I'd expect that number to be a lot higher as well.
You wonder how it compares with other industries, really. So I presume there are complaints rising in all kinds of industries at the moment, all of the time. And I think it's possibly because we have a sense of what interpersonal relationships should be like that perhaps doesn't have the space for mistake that it once had. There may be something around that, where every minor mistake becomes, a major fallout rather than somebody apologizing and moving on.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, I do feel like sometimes schools can have quite a because what I like about what you said there, Chris, is I feel like sometimes, I feel like what you said there is very asset based, kind of, leaning into, we get the parents in, we get them on side. It's crucial that we do X, Y, Z so that, that they can show up for, both the small and big things at school. And I feel like sometimes with school, I find that they can have quite a deficit kind of mindset when it comes to judging parents or families. I think sometimes someone with a genuine complaint or concern, or maybe, miscommunication, maybe it's a parent who, for whatever reason, wasn't aware of, some of your behavior policies, or maybe has a child that's only in year 7, or maybe it's their first child, or, maybe their child's an in-year admission from another school, or, there's like all kinds of things. Everyone's got their own experience. But I think sometimes parents can be viewed quite negatively by a school, and you can almost see it in the way in which they're dealt with. And I really hate that. And to flip it on its head as well, there's also sometimes a case where there's a teacher who might be disliked for whatever reason by SLT, or isn't as well supported or treated as well as maybe other members of staff. And if a complaint was to come from them, I feel like the focus can shift from the complaint itself to who it's a complaint about. Does that make sense? And I feel like it can be a bit of a lottery how well supported a teacher is when it comes to a complaint. And I think it's really sad that ever since I've started teaching, the amount of teachers I've met who say, I'm a member of the union just in case, like teachers do 1,000,001 good things a day. They're all there because they want to better the lives of children. There's so many incredible examples of teachers and just little acts they do every single day to support their school community. And yet, at the end of the day, so many of them are going home paying a subscription to a union for no reason other than they are acutely aware that at any point they can become subject to an allegation that's just a really big misunderstanding or has really taken off. Like, we have teachers in the country who've gone into hiding because of a mob outside their school. I'm sure I've seen that on the news a couple of times, and that's really sad. That's really, really sad. And so I guess it's true, Chris and Rae, that, it's, you said, Chris, considering the number of interpersonal kind of interactions on a daily basis, that the number isn't higher. But I think the question for me is, since they are so high already, what, protection will be given to individual teachers or to staff? What are the implications for staff and schools? Is there a way, or do schools deserve to be compensated for the amount of manpower and time that has to go into managing these complaints? Because they take a lot of time. They take so much time.
Yeah, and I think actually in some cases, school leadership needs to be a bit clearer about how they implement their policies, so that if someone's coming in at level 7 and your complaints policy that begins at level 1, you turn them around and say, well, actually you need to go back to level 1. If you're dealing with any other significant industry, if you've ever tried to make a financial complaint to the finance ombudsman, out of interest, you get bounced back to level 1 of the complaints policy straight away if so-and-so travel company hasn't refunded you for your messed up holiday. Then you've got to go all the way through the steps. So there needs to be a bit more about schools making clear that they're going to follow the policy, whatever the nature of the complaint. And then they'll have systems for making sure they're escalated to the right level. So partly it's got to be a bit more about bravery, I think, from leadership teams. And again, that goes back to the kind of public discourse, there's one place where you're always guaranteed to see a positive news story about a teaching professional. It's usually in the local newspaper just after that teacher has died, and suddenly everybody's full of tributes for all of the work that that person did while they lived. And sometimes when you look back at these people in their 70s and 80s who've died a relatively natural death, you think about all of the human interactions they've had over an entire career of 30 plus years. And then it's when you hear the students come back and say, oh, I remember Mr. So-and-so, he was fantastic. I've never written such a strange and imaginative story as I did when I was in his English class on a Thursday in 1972. So there's that sense of there is an appreciation out there, but it often comes too late. And again, it's about the national leadership of our profession making clear to the public and to our political overlords that these kinds of things are happening every day. There are life-changing interactions happening every day in schools. Both of you probably will have been involved in some kind of life-changing interaction with a young person, some of which you may not even recognize yet. But perhaps in 10, 15 years' time when they turn up, this has happened to me a couple of times in my career, actually, and they've turned up and said, well, I've decided that I'm going to be a teacher, sir, and you're going to be my mentor for the next 2 years. These kind of things do actually happen. So it's worth holding on to that positive message, I think. So for all of the negative press about teachers and teaching complaints, just remember that those interactions you're involved with every day are making a difference every day to people who haven't yet realized what that difference is.
Yeah, that's so true and lovely, but also so true. I mean, I've had a student I ran into on the street a few years back, and she was like, "Oh man, I really tried actually to not remember this kid's name because it was constant aggro with her mom. I was the kid's head of year, and it was just like a constant. She was one of those parents that you didn't contact unless you absolutely had to, and then you usually got SLT to do it because it was going to just devolve into chaos. And she came out, miss, I've done this, and it's all thanks to you and your support. I'm so grateful. And because, she's like, I don't know, 19 or 20 at this point. And I was just like, I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you. And we had a big hug. And in my head, I'm thinking, girl, your mom tried to get me sacked like 5 times. Like, your mother hated me. Like, I dreaded coming to work because of your parent. But she was so grateful and so lovely and was doing amazing things with their life. And it was just one of those like, okay, this is why we do what we do. This is worth it. This is, focus on the students in front of you and doing the best for them. And then everything else is just kind of noise. But when you're in it, the noise is very loud and it's hard to kind of get that perspective, but it is necessary.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, yeah, it's what you said, Chris, is really inspirational. I think with me, no matter how challenging a class has been, at the end of the year, just kind of forget it all. When you're waving them out, like, for the last time, even just in one academic year, they might not even be leaving the school. You might have them again in September. But I feel like no matter what you guys have been through over that year, I don't know, I just always feel quite positive at the end. So I agree, Chris, like there are so many elements of teaching, both on a daily basis and also just when looking at the bigger picture, that's really positive. And what you said about the financial ombudsman, I don't know like where to find this financial ombudsman or whatever, but I do use it as a threat every now and then. Just the week before last, I had a delivery that never arrived and I was denied a refund. And I heard somewhere that if you say that you're going to get the financial ombudsman involved, you will get a refund. So that's exactly what I said. And I think I'll continue. And I got my refund straight away after that, by the way. So I didn't even know there were like levels, but it's good to know.
Yeah, so tougher
people.
Management of complaint systems. We don't want to go down the same route as a certain famous international airline whenever you try to make a complaint to them. But we do need people to go through the levels. We do need our management to be clear about what that level is. We do need them to not show favoritism to particular parents. And we do need to say a bit more about what we should expect from parents and their interactions with us, so that we can make our interactions with their children as positive as possible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the next topic, Rae?
Yeah. So our second topic for discussion is, and this is from Schools Week. So this headline is, there's a trust that is going to pilot people's ideas to solve the key stage 3 engagement crisis. So there's a trust that says there's an engagement crisis that kind of really peaks, or troughs rather, in year 8 in their secondary schools. Students say that they're not engaged in school. They don't really care. They don't feel like they belong, etc. And this was based on information from the schools in this particular trust. So it's 21,000 pupils and 1,700 teachers ish. And just to give you a sense of the numbers, 84% of year 6 pupils said they had a sense of belonging in school, but by year 9, that number had dropped to 58%, and particularly in year 8, less than half of girls in year 8 who were receiving free school meals felt they belonged at school. So there's a number of kind of words that I think that need unpacking here. Engagement seems to be based on a sense of belonging in school, and key stage 3 seems to really mean year 8 and year 9. And I've long said year 8 are the neglected middle children of schools. That's when everything drops. But my immediate reaction to this trust and what they're saying is, that's really funny that it gets really bad in year 8 and year 9 when they're all turning into teenagers and getting hormonal. And the entire time I've been teaching for 15 years, it's been exactly the same pattern. You get these little keen beans in year 7 who are excited to go to big school or terrified. And they're 11 years old. And then the hormones start kicking in. Year 8 and year 9 is when everything goes absolute madhouse, because they're going through all the turmoil of being a young teenager, and they're interested in far more things than sitting in a classroom learning about X, Y, and Z. And by year 10, a lot of them have started to mature a little bit and also have the focus of GCSEs. So I don't understand where this has come from, and where's in this particular article anyway, there's no data from previous years, that they're not comparing this to like, oh, well, 10 years ago, the numbers weren't as bad. It just seems to be like, here's this fact that every teacher in secondary school ever knows has always happened. Let's call it disengagement, and let's decide now that it's a problem and that they need to trial some things or consider trialing some things to try and fix it, like starting school later, et cetera, et cetera. I find this all very confusing. Does anyone have any more useful insights?
Yeah, we had a solution for this. It was called middle schools. If you think about the way Key Stage 3 operates in quite a lot of large secondary schools, it's increasingly, year 7 is a year where they spend their time trying to work out where they're supposed to be and when, in umpteen different subjects with umpteen different teachers in different rooms. Year 9 is basically when they're starting their GCSE work in quite a lot of schools. And year 8 is the people that can't quite work out which one of those two categories they really belong to. If Key Stage 3 was split across the middle school and the secondary school, okay, there might be some issues for curriculum continuity, but those exist already. I'd be putting younger children into smaller school spaces with fewer faces to get to know, and closer connections with all of those teachers that teach them, and give them a training ground before they move up to the secondary school. The leap from being top of a primary school, like my daughter's primary school, where she is one of 2 girls in year 6 and is taught in classes of about 12 to 15 children in year 5 and 6 together. Well, the step up from that to the local, in our case, big secondary school for rural North Yorkshire is about 400 children. But I went to a school of 1,000 children in my high school, having gone through a first school, middle school, high school system. If we can give those children the opportunity to engage more with people they know in a middle school, then we won't have an engagement crisis. And in fact, I don't think we have an engagement crisis. We just have a Key Stage 3 identity crisis.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I'd phrase it perfectly. So
This article like confused me, I'll be honest. I don't know, it was confusing. But one thing it did make me think about was similar to what you said, Chris. You know, the children in primary school go from managing the expectations of maybe one or two teachers to then, you know, managing the expectations of, I don't know, like 15 subjects or teachers or whatever. And I think a lot of children do struggle with that. And I think I remember once seeing this graph about suspensions, and I think the year with the biggest or like the sharpest rise in suspensions for a year group is year 7. So, you know, children who've just come out of primary school and started secondary school, I think typically have the highest level of suspensions per academic year. And I think it's been the same for a long time. I might be making this up, to be clear, but I have seen that. I don't know how long the records were for, but so I don't know. I thought about that. And another thing I also thought about was that there used to be year 9 SATs. You know, year 9 used to be like a serious year. You know, like I remember, you know, people older than me in year 9 who would say, you know, I have to do well in my SATs because it's gonna, you know, determine the sets I'm gonna be in at GCSE. And like, I don't know, like it just felt like year 7 was the, you know, identity crisis year. Well, no, actually, year 7 was the year where you were getting used to being in school and everyone was like nice to you. All the teachers would kind of let you off for things because you were really small. And then year 8 was just the wild year where, you know, you still had a year until you had to be serious. And then year 9 was the serious year where you're trying to do well in your SATs so that you could have better options at GCSE. That's what school, I think, used to be like. Whereas now, if I was in year 7 and I know my exams are like in 4 or 5 years, you know, like I just feel like there's just sometimes like, I don't know, just maybe a lack of direction. I feel like, you know, one thing I will say as a science teacher, one thing that really frustrates me is when I inherited or, you know, I picked up a new class, GCSE science class. Doesn't matter if they're combined or triple, higher or foundation, it really does not matter. And I look at their prior data because Key Stage 3 is so crucial for how that pupil is able to engage at GCSE. And, you know, I think what happens sometimes is, you know, I feel so exhausted as a year 11 teacher having to throw, or, you know, even if it isn't my decision, but every intervention under the sun will get thrown at children where had you, you know, looked at or analyzed their data in year 7 and year 8 and year 9, you could clearly see that there were problems then, they were underachieving then. And it's now become the thing for the year 11 teacher or, you know, the GCSE teacher to kind of manage. And it's really difficult to do that for a full class of GCSE students. So you might have more than one class. So I don't know, like, I just feel like the schools that have a really, I don't know, like, I've been to schools that kind of repeat the same curriculum every year up until year 11. I have mixed views on it, but I feel like I suspect if those kids were asked about belonging, or I don't know, like if they were part of this survey, I don't know, part of me just feels like they would feel maybe a higher sense of belonging. I don't know, I just feel like the more guided your learning is in Key Stage 3 and the more reminders you get about the ultimate purpose of, you know, what you can get out of secondary school, I just think the better it is for children. But I will also say I do think having a sense of belonging is important. I know it's really vague. I know a lot of us don't really know what that means, and it's so subjective that how do you even quantify that? But I do think a sense of belonging is important. I think children should be happy or feel like they belong at school. Like, I hate the idea of children feeling invisible at school or feeling like they shouldn't be there. But equally, I think every teacher would say the same. So, like, I haven't said anything particularly groundbreaking, but yeah, like, I don't know, the belonging aspect, I do wonder if in year 7 I was so sad when I left primary school, you know, like I was sad. Like you go from being the oldest in a school and quite, you know, self-assured to being the youngest, and sometimes people point at you and laugh like, haha, look how small they are, you know. So is this just normal?
I don't know. I feel like, sorry, I've just had a massive coughing attack, but I went to a different primary school almost every year of my life because we moved houses and moved cities almost every year of my life. So I find it really difficult to relate to the whole going from this comfortable primary school where everyone knows you and you've been there for 6 years or 8 years or whatever it is, and then going to a big scary like that was every September. So I don't really know. I don't really get, honestly, I don't really get it. I think it's just a matter of people being really comfortable and then getting a kick up the butt and not knowing how to cope. But for those of us that had to do that on a 12-month every 12 months, you get used to it pretty quick. So I feel like it's going to be really difficult to kind of change that. I think you're always going to have this problem. If you have people who grow up in the same house and don't move and go to the same primary school and don't move, they're always going to find year 7 as a shock. And they're always going to be focused on just kind of surviving that and getting used to it and getting through it. And then, like, okay, what you said about your 9 with it being serious. I mean, the only kind of seriousness of it now is you have all the teachers threatening GCSE start. And a lot of schools, they do start in year 9. They've got a 3-year Key Stage 4. But you've also got, in the schools that don't, you also have year 9 choosing their options. So there's that kind of level of seriousness. Like it's definitely a preparation year for even schools that don't start the GCSE curriculum in year 9.
It's never as serious as sitting in an external exam.
No,
you know,
it's not.
I don't know. There's just something about having to wait for your results to come from this mysterious marking place that, I don't know, I feel like used to have a positive impact on kids.
Yeah, but then you know, if you're brave to say that out loud, because so many voices now are going to be talking about how, you know, sitting another exam is traumatic. But I do think there's a point, because we talked a couple weeks ago about, do we really need to bring in like a reading test in year 8? Is that the way of doing it? And I guess maybe part of the logic of bringing that in is similar to what you just said about, you know, getting serious in year 9. But I feel like I don't know. I mean, what is the point of the year 9 SATs? Is that a good way to make things more serious? Is a test in year 8 a good effect? Is it a meaningful way? Or are we just putting a test in for the sake of it? Because as I said before,
to be honest, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like I wasn't really like old enough to know about whether or not the year 9 SATs were like particularly effective. And I don't like the idea of like just chucking in exams to make kids like take things seriously. I feel like the weird thing for me is I feel like every single year is of equal importance. I think COVID highlighted that really well, that there is no good year to miss of your education. And so I also don't want it to be a thing of, okay, well, you've got, because if we're saying it's just year 9 that's going to be serious, and you've still got 2 years before that to mess about, you know. But I don't know if year 9 SATs were particularly effective, but I do think it was maybe a better way of determining sets. I don't know. I've got my own kind of like, I feel like I'm now talking from like my personal experience of being in a school. Like, you know, I was free school meals at school. I lived on a council estate. I was considered poor. But I went to the best school in the borough, which just happened to be around the corner from the estate that I lived on. And it was the school of choice for a lot of the more affluent people in the borough. You know, I used to sit next to people in tutor time who had like heated floors and like games rooms. And I would sometimes be sharing a room with like 4 people, you know. So I just had a really different experience. And sometimes I felt both invisible and hyper visible. And I would very much say I didn't necessarily always feel like I belonged at school. I kind of felt like I was there because the council put me there and not because the school really wanted me there. And that does have like an effect on your, like, I just feel like that can have an effect on your mind in like a critical window of your life. But at the same time, I really respected my teachers. I liked being at school. I did all my work. I had a good relationship with all my teachers and like all of those things. And there were some teachers that I connected with better than others because I felt like they cared about me or saw me, you know, as an individual. And then I had other teachers. I didn't know when I was at school that teachers actually have information on your background. I didn't know, aside from what they could obviously see about me, I didn't know that they would know that I was free school meals or that maybe where I lived and all those things. And so I had some teachers I would never talk to about that because I just felt like my form tutor lived on the grounds of Eton because her husband was a teacher there. So she used to come in. I grew up in West London. So she used to come in every day from Eton, and we had absolutely nothing in common, like genuinely nothing in common. And at first I found it really alienating. Like she'd ask me questions where I'd almost be embarrassed to answer because either I didn't know what she was talking about or I couldn't relate to it or she didn't relate to me. But I mean, in the end, I loved her. I was really sad. Like when she was leaving, I was really, really sad. Like I grew to really love her. But at first, it was really alienating for me. So I had a lot of teachers who were like really, really posh and I would just avoid them. And then I had other teachers that, I don't know, I just kind of felt like I remember I had a teacher this history teacher who was posh, but he lived in quite a dangerous part of like northwest London. And one day he came to school and he said, oh, you know, I was late to school today because there was a drive-by outside my house. And I just thought, you know, this sounds really twisted, but I just remember thinking, I can relate to you. You know, there are shootings outside your house. And mind you, I'd never seen a shooting. I've still never seen a shooting in my life. But I just thought, that's not good. Like, that doesn't sound good. And that doesn't sound like the people that alienate me at school. So I can now, you know, relate to you. Like, I just remember having such weird, like, cursory assessments just quietly in my mind about my teachers. I don't even know how I started talking about this. But yeah, I don't know if Year 9 SATs are particularly effective, but I just feel like the school, I don't know, I just feel like there's so much variation across the country in what happens at Key Stage 3. And considering we're now in a position where over a third of children don't even pass, get a 5 in English and maths, or maybe is it a 4? I don't know, don't even pass GCSE English and maths. Like, I just think there is a lot of scope to improve Key Stage 3. I think that's where all the answers lie.
Chris, you got to have an opinion because I need to cough again.
Yeah, so I used to be in the position of having to teach children the Key Stage 3 Year 9 SATs, and as an English teacher, it wasn't very helpful. You had to rush them through a Shakespeare play much quicker than they could possibly digest it, and it was completely pointless. I'd have much preferred testing them in the way I wanted to, spending as long as I wanted on the play, and making sure they understood who all of the characters of the Tempest were before I bothered to ask them a significant question about the difference between Prospero and Caliban, for instance. And then the Year 8 reading test, well, it's supposed to pick up early problems, isn't it?
Early, no.
72% into a student's compulsory education. I mean, that's not early in my book. I don't see those offering much, but they will produce some numbers that can go into a spreadsheet, and then people can act on the numbers in a spreadsheet. I think that's their primary purpose, really. But yeah, Key Stage 3, essentially the question we need to ask is, what is it for? I suppose part of the plan for the Academy All Through School system was that children in Year 7 would feel a little bit more at home as a consequence of being on a site or a closely linked site with the big secondary school to which they would be going upon transfer. So, I mean, I taught in the all through system as well in London in the state sector, and it was still a challenge taking little children from little classrooms into big school sites with 1,000, 2,000 children on them who were essentially, 8 foot tall in some cases if they were in the basketball team. So, there's always going to be that transition challenge, which you mentioned, Rae, and some children will feel it more than others. But it would be nice if they could just enjoy Key Stage 3 a bit in an environment that was more geared up towards Key Stage 3 being important than an environment in which Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5 are important in the secondary school. If you've got a sixth form, the most important children in the school culturally tend to be the children about to leave it. It'd be great if it's the children about to enter it.
Yeah, and I think Yasmin, maybe you mentioned this. The perfect example of our backwards priorities is seen in intervention. What are all the teachers doing after school, before school, lunchtime, form time? They're doing intervention sessions, and I have a problem with that, broadly speaking. But who are they doing it with? Year 11, year 13, year 11, year 13. How about if we fixed the issues that had been flagged in year 7 and actually built these kids up? We wouldn't have such a huge problem in year 11 and 13. And happy side effect, the kids wouldn't be so stressed and under pressure and constantly overworked. They might actually have some time to breathe and revise on their own. And then the Key Stage 3 students I wouldn't call it intervention. I'd sell it somehow else, but that's where the focus needs to be, not at the last minute, at the final hour when, ships have sailed and you're screaming from the end of a dock. Anyway, just a reminder, everybody, we are brought to you by Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools. So reminder of that website, it is hachetlearning.com. They've got loads of stuff there you should please check out. And we are over our hour, folks. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been an interesting one, and I feel like we definitely could talk about Key Stage 3 engagement for hours because there's so much going so wrong and then a few things going so right in so many schools. But thank you very much, and have a lovely Sunday or day whenever you are listening, and we will hopefully see you soon.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.